What's up, chat? Today we have with us a very, very special guest. We're joined by Kunal Shah, an F1 expert with years of experience in racing, journalism, and the business side of the sport. He's worked with the Force India F1 team, co-hosts the Inside Line F1 podcast, and regularly shares insights on platforms like First Post and Viaplay. With nearly 2 decades in the industry, Kunal brings a deep understanding of the sport, from the paddock to the track. Beyond motorsport, he is an avid sailor, reflecting his diverse passion for sports. Welcome so much, Kunal. Great to have
Wow,
you.
thank you for that. Thank you for that introduction. Almost nobody introduces me as a sailor whenever I'm on a motorsport podcast. So I have an even bigger smile on my face for that. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. How did you get into sailing?
Well, I served the Sea Cadet Corps for 6 years. It's in Navy Nagar in Mumbai, and I'm still very attached to the organization. And I was a good cadet out there, so they gave me the opportunity to learn how to sail. And then I haven't stopped sailing since I was probably 11 years old, or maybe 10 years old now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, India's best sailor currently, Vishnu Sarvanan, is a fan of the podcast, actually.
Oh,
If you've
fantastic.
heard of him, he's an
Of
Olympian.
course.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's incredible.
he's come
Wow.
for our watch parties, and he's an incredible person himself. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. I like I said, I never thought that the opening minute talking Formula One would include talking sailing, which actually motorsport and sailing are very, very similar as sports. You know, they're all trying to master the wind, master aerodynamics or thermodynamics, however you call it, depending on what the surface is. Or what the or what the material is. Air is fluid as we call it. But thank you. Great to be on the show with you guys, and looking forward to talking sailing and Formula One.
Okay, that's all I had on sailing actually. So I'm going to move into Formula One. I mentioned in the intro that you spent some time with Force India. So how was your time at Force India? Any crazy stories that you can share with us?
Well, my time at Force India was career defining, life changing, very challenging, very enriching, very entertaining as well, and some very, very fun stories. If I can summarize it, it was, of course, working very closely with Vijay Mallya and the executive team and the board members, including Subrata Roy Sahara as well. Actually, two stories that I can share. First was everyone thought Vijay Mallya was in it for the glamour, right? But he was actually in it for the racing. He's a true racer at heart. He knows exactly what it takes to get a racing team to fire and get faster. Okay. I've seen other owners who just are there because there is a strong return on investment, or to their money or to the brand that they get. But VJM, as we fondly call him, knew exactly what was needed to make the car go faster. When he bought the team, we were the last on the grid, pretty much, further than last, if that was possible at all. But in our peaks, we were hitting fourth place, which was, pretty much the highest we could go with the kind of package we had. And it was a shame that the team got taken away from him for all the other problems that he faced with his business. But yeah, what a guy! What a fantastic time I've had working with him. And somebody with a lot of vision. He wanted to build India's racing car drivers, the next generation, say after the likes of Naren Karthikeyan. We ran a program called the One from a Billion Hunt. It was a driver development program, and all three drivers who are currently racing, with the Indian flag proudly on their uniforms and their helmets, Arjun Baini, Jehan Daruwala, and Kush Maini, were all products of the academy. Kush, of course, it'll be unfair to call him as a product of the academy or a direct product, because his brother Arjun was, the one who was a product of the academy, and Kush was this little boy running around in our briefing sessions, hearing everything, absorbing everything. So I call him an indirect product of the academy. So that was one summarized story or an experience journal of how it's to work with Vijay Mallya. And I always like to share some fun stuff as well. Working with Subrata Roy, very interesting story. Of course, he's no longer there to verify or deny whether this happened,
So say anything
but
you want.
yeah. So I had the responsibility to sign off the livery of the car, the way the cars look, and hence the sponsor decals on the
Mm-hmm.
car, because everything you put there is measured, is valued, is sold at that valuation, etc. So it's a very mathematical science. Okay. That science has to merge with the science of aerodynamics. Okay.
Wow.
So if you see in a Formula One car and you see a side pod, the side pod is always curved.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and hence the logo that goes on the side pod will always appear curved as well. It's just aerodynamics win over branding. And I went to Subrata Roy. This was in Sahara Star at his suite, which had a pretty fancy office as well. And then he looks at the drawings, the engineering drawings, and he asks for a pencil, and he says that side pod which is curved, he redraws his own side pod and tells me, tell Andrew Green to flatten this. Andrew Green was the chief technical officer at the team there, and he literally drew over the engineering drawing which I had taken for approvals, and he flattened the side pod, something that cost millions of dollars to make. He said, "Tell him I want my logo. Sahara should be flat on it." Okay. And I remember that was not a battle for me to fight. I stepped out. I immediately sent an email to VJ saying, "You got to sort this, boss. This is beyond my pay grade."
Do you think that's something similar to what happened with Mercedes when they ended up with no side pods in the season?
No, I think Mercedes genuinely tried to make a concept work, which was the zero pods or no side pod concept. And I wish it would have worked, because that would have changed the design philosophy for Formula One cars for generations to come. Okay. But as 2022 showed, all teams except for Red Bull put their focus in an area where they didn't get much of gains. And that focus was on pretty much the floor of the car and the suspension, which is what Adrian Newey designed himself at Red Bull, which is why they were on the most dominant run ever. But I think this year's Formula One season will be defined by incremental gains the teams can make, but also crucially, how much flexing they will be able to pull off with all the stringent legal tests that the FIA has put in place already. So I wish Mercedes went down the road and it worked for them. We would have probably seen, if it worked for them, we would have seen a lot more cars trying to not have side pods or have half a side pod if possible. But I think we'll have to wait till somebody else, like maybe Adrian Newey, pulls that off at some time.
I didn't know designing the livery was such a specific job of the car itself. So that's super interesting. Just going on the basis of that, which is your all-time favorite livery? Taking into the sponsors into account and the colors, just from a design perspective.
So the Jordan that Michael Schumacher raced, okay, the 1991. I think it was also something 91. That was the name of the car. It was the Seven Up colors, or yeah, the Seven Up branding with the really green, beautiful green color, which has never been used again. So that
Wow.
to me was beautiful. I would say Jordan again. And I love Eddie Jordan for how creative he got with the Benson and Hedges branding, which became Buzzing Hornets, the yellow and the black and yellow Formula One car, the fastest taxis you could find in the world ever. And I will be biased here. In 2011, 2012, I redesigned the livery for the Force India car. So we used to have a very flaggy, wavy
Mm-hmm.
design, and I wanted a far more pixelated design, like a car was just flashing through colors. And instead of the colors, appearing fluid, we wanted the colors to appear pixelated, because everything's getting digital. So we redesigned that. So I would say those pretty much are my top. And then I think also, when I think of a Formula One car, the golden and black livery that the Lotus team
Mm-hmm.
used back in days was also pretty fantastic. So I didn't choose one, I chose four. But we've got 75 plus years of history to look at, or to look back at, when picking such beautiful liveries.
All of them, all the ones that you picked out, we are just looking them up. They look awesome, especially the one you designed. And I think the Benson Hedges one was so good. That's probably why my dad smokes that brand till this day, because he's a huge Formula One fan, and the design was so good, probably had a huge impact on him.
Yeah, everything on a Formula One car actually is so scientific that when you see a particular part of the car colored differently, there's a reason. What we call as hot and cold areas. Teams run lots of algorithms, lots of viewing algorithms, which logo appears best on TV with which colors in the foreground and the background and so on. And there are agencies that run millions of dollars of valuation. So your dad being influenced by Jensen and Benson and Hedges was fantastic. I loved it when they changed it to buzzing hornets. Something that appealed to me as somebody who always saw Formula One cars just buzzing around a race circuit. And hornets are also fairly ferocious creatures, I would say.
Yeah. So I think Drive to Survive obviously has been, a major part of the sport, exploding popularity, also increasing, more people tuning in to view it. It coincided really well with the 2021 season as well. And obviously, the way that season ended, brought a lot of people in. I guess they had expectations that all Formula One seasons go like this. But I mean, last year had its moments as well, right? I think the late almost title battle that we got and Max versus Lando. But what are your what are you most excited to watch back in Drive to Survive? Which moment of the season?
Wow. I am actually excited to watch what happened last year at Alpine because they went through yet another round of management changes. Flavio Briatore, I think I made an early bold prediction already on Twitter. Flavio Briatore is going to be the next hero or superstar coming out of the Netflix Drive to Survive show, just because of who he is, how honest he is, how blunt he is. That's what worked for Gunther Steiner. So I'm excited for that. I hope there is more coverage for what happened with Daniel Ricciardo because he was suddenly given the boot, even though he was told he's going to be given the boot if things don't change. So that was one. Again, I'd made an early season prediction last year that this is going to be last season of Checo Perez, and not much has come out in the media of Sergio Perez's, sacking from Red Bull Racing. So I'm hoping that is also addressed in many ways because yes, they were sporting decisions, but there's a human side to those decisions. And I think what Drive to Survive has done is made the heroes, the drivers, the more human, more common, like your neighbors next door. They have the same insecurities as all of us do, and I'm pretty excited for the season 7 that's going to come out in a few days' time. And I think Drive to Survive is probably one of the most incredible marketing tools that any sporting series in the world has used to further themselves to a newer fan base. Because MotoGP followed suit, Formula E did, tennis did, golf has done that as well. So pretty much every major
Every
sport
sport.
in the world, yeah. They said if it can work for Drive to Survive, it should work for us. But the truth is, it's not worked for anyone else. Drive to Survive is very unique in that sense.
I, I'm surprised you didn't say the papaya rules incident. Um,
I think I think the whole Lando Norris versus Max Verstappen battle was overhyped. There was never a battle. Formula One always needs a battle to talk of because, again, having been in the business of broadcast, have you all realized that every time a hero retires, there are three heroes that are built who will take up their space in your emotions? Okay. So in my case, when Sachin Tendulkar was retiring, there was suddenly Mahendra Singh Dhoni and then Virat Kohli and so on. So even in the case of Formula One, they need to always try and hype up a battle. If the battle is for P3 and P4, so be it. They will hype it up because they want people to believe that when they tune in to watch a race, the result is actually impacting somebody's life, or in this case, somebody's business, the business of the Formula One team and the driver, because a lot of money rides on all the points they score and where they finish in the championship and so on. So I think the Norris Verstappen battle was hyped last year. I would love to see them start from scratch this year. And talking of papaya rules, I think even the papaya rules hence were very hyped. Okay, if anything, it exposed a little silly part, a little not so mature part of a race team where They tried to keep it equal between the drivers, and then they ended up just messing up the papaya, as we say. But I'd love to see if papaya rules actually come into play this year because, Oscar Piastri had a bit of a rough end to 2024. How will he pick up 2025? That's what I'm looking to see.
Got it. So building from there, I've been propagating anti-Norris agenda since I joined this podcast. I don't know. There's something about that guy that just doesn't sit right with me, and I think obviously I'm a massive, massive Hamilton fan, as you can see with all the Ferrari merch I've shown up with. But do you think they need to have a number one driver? I thought one of the biggest mistakes they made in that run-in last year was not making a very clear prioritization of who's number one, who's number two. So, do you think there should be a number one driver? If so, is it Lando? Is it Oscar?
I would say that Formula One teams have actually matured a fair bit. Okay. Back in time, the gaps between teammates was actually very large. Okay. And not all teammates were there on talent. And even the equipment given to the teammates were very different, etc. In which case it was easy to just prioritize people. Will there be a prioritization at the start of the season? I really hope not, because we have, for the first time in history, everyone's already saying there could be a minimum of 8 winners before the season is even started. Okay. So if they prioritize one driver over the other and so on, they will rob us of a genuine title battle. As the season progresses, should they prioritize? I think that will probably end up happening at McLaren, who are aiming to win a drivers' championship for the first time in almost 20 years or something that's been there. So I wouldn't blame them for putting such a prioritization. But I think the main thing McLaren need to do is they need to have a car that is clearly the best of the field. I wouldn't say I'm anti Norris. If any driver I'm anti of, it's one billionaire son driver that we have. Okay. I but I
Aren't
but I,
all of
I
them
would say
billionaire
that
sons, though?
No.
To a
not
certain
really.
extent.
No. Well, yeah, partially you're right. They're all billionaires paying their way through. But, then if they've realized that they don't have the talent, they've moved on doing other things. In the case of one particular son, I think the son is, just hanging around there. I don't know, waiting for what. But back to the Norris thing, I think where he needs to win the battle against Max is this. Is he equally capable in the car? I would say almost. Is he as adaptive? Is he as consistent? Well, he is adaptive. Is he as consistent? Maybe not. But it's somebody like Max Verstappen, top three, top four driver in the history of the sport we are comparing, Lando Norris with. So McLaren need a very clearly quick car with a sizable advantage where Norris can qualify up ahead and run away with the race, and that's the one way I foresee him winning races, and if the championship, if it comes to it. But if it is closely fought, Lando Norris is yet to deal with a ruthless Lewis Hamilton. He's yet to deal with a ruthless Charles Leclerc. Okay, so when everyone's got a chance at winning races, Lando's going to have 4 times the number of drivers than he had last year to compete in the world championship with, and that's when I think he's going to get tested the most.
And Hamilton has no wife and kids, so we already know his intentions.
And so does Fernando Alonso. I think Fernando Alonso is another fantastic character. You give him half a chance and he'll make something of it. So, Lewis Hamilton in that Ferrari gunning for not his eighth, but what he calls his first title with Ferrari. I think that's the story everyone's going to tune in for everyone's sake, for Ferrari's sake, for Lewis's sake. I really hope he's in the battle for it. I think just having him in the battle for it would be fantastic. I think what happened last year very clearly, Ferrari had a quick car. Okay, they had two very quick drivers. And where they lost it was between Monaco and Monza when they went down the wrong route of development and as most teams can go so. But what happened was also very anti-Ferrari. Usually, a Ferrari would just get derailed through a season and only recover next year. Okay, but I believe it was the leadership of Frederick Vasseur that that sort of brought them back into play towards the second third of the season, I would say, or the last third of the season.
Yeah, I think Fred's honestly been incredible for Ferrari. His leadership seems really like he knows what he's doing. He's making the good decisions most of the time. And do you think, I mean, from this season's perspective, right, redoing the whole platform for their car, making sure, in my eyes, it seems like a decision where they don't want it to peak after three races. And they, as you said, incremental changes, incremental upgrades to win and keep going till the end of the season. So do you think that's a good idea for them, basis the testing that we've seen?
I would say it's always good to experiment. F1 teams almost always know way beforehand that if I'm going down a certain design direction, where is the peak of that direction? Okay. I think they also are trying at Ferrari to have a more long-term view. If a win comes in 2025, it would probably be a bonus given how further behind every team has been in this era of Formula One, further behind to Red Bull Racing. So can they already run experiments which basically help them understand what characteristics Lewis would appreciate the most in the car and see if 2026 is what they're preparing for. But it just goes to show, even in the last year of a rule era, teams are still willing to take risks. Teams are still willing to make design changes, fundamental design changes to their package, just because they know that even with half a chance available, they still have to go for the title this year if the opportunity comes. Because if you remember BMW 20 years ago, they were actually in the battle for the championship, and they said, no, 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 it's too early. The plan was to win the championship the next year, not this year. So they stopped developing this year's car. So they lost it this year. And by the time it was the next year, when BMW thought they'll be quick, the others were quicker. So when the opportunity comes, you just put your best foot forward. And I think that's what Ferrari is doing, and they're helping Lewis Hamilton do as well.
You don't deserve to win if you say no to winning. How can you do that?
Yeah, and I love one thing about Formula One. It's about winning at the slowest possible pace. Okay. It's about being so comfortable in your car, in your strategy with your tires, that you are able to drive just below the absolute margin of the car, which basically means your rivals are behind you, even though you're driving lower than your margin. I think that's what we've largely seen Mercedes do when they were dominating, Red Bull do this era when they were dominating. But I get the feeling in 25, everyone's limits are going to be pushed. Absolutely. Because everyone's, like you're saying, going to try and create that chance to win.
Yeah, I agree. And I think obviously testing, you take with a pinch of salt. You never know what's really going to happen. But Williams and Alpine, I think, looked pretty good. They look like they made some really major improvements. I think the real problems that I could see were Aston Martin and Sauber. So yeah, any thoughts? What for Adrian Newey, he starts work what next week? What is he getting into? And yeah, what is he going to have to do for them?
So Adrian Newey actually started work yesterday,
Oh, okay.
which was which was his first day. He was supposed to join after the 1st of March, and the 3rd of March was the Monday when he joined. The Newey era of Aston Martin has started, and I think Adrian's biggest impact is going to be felt next year. Although he will have his wisdom running on this year's cars, this year's operations, and so on. So it may well be that 5, 7, or 8 races into 2025 when we actually start seeing the impact Adrian Newey will make. And I guess the preseason testing that we had offered more confusion, offered more complexity, and hence offers more suspense for the season ahead as well. And the reason why I say that is, firstly, in Bahrain we had European weather in testing, which meant that pretty much all the teams, even though they ran their programs, didn't really get the representative running that they would get in Bahrain, for example. So what do I mean by representative running? You run in Bahrain in 30 degrees temperature, and suddenly you go and it's 15 and 18 degrees. It's not representative to any of the previous runs you had in Bahrain, and you probably had a run there for the last 20 years that the race has been around. So all the data that you would match and correlate with is suddenly with a big caveat that, okay, this was run in much cooler conditions, much windier conditions. And I know lots of creators have put out saying, wow, Alpine went 3 seconds quicker and Carlos Sainz in his Williams went the quickest and so on. The truth is that year after year, especially in the same era of the sport, it's expected that the teams would go quicker. Okay, because nobody stands still. You're always developing the car, you're always finding ways to make it go faster. If you bring the same car that you ran in Bahrain last year and you won the race with, this year you might not even qualify in the bottom five because pretty much every team has made relative progress. Okay, but I would take the testing times with a lot of pinches of salts because in the case of Carlos Sainz and Williams, they were very open and they said, Carlos Sainz is getting only 1.5 days in the car. He wants to know how to push the limits of the car. So they said, we will give you one really low fueled run with soft tires on. And then he put those tires with extremely low fuel, and hence he could go and top those timings as well. So, all in all, I would say, yes, Alpine looked much stronger. They're carrying their momentum from the second half of last year when they suddenly jumped Haas as well in the Constructors' Championship. And Sauber is still struggling because they've just struggled in this era of Formula One. Hopefully, they're hoping that 2026 is when they're able to showcase their might as Audi. And again, in Aston Martin's case, they had just one driver pretty much lifting all the testing duties, with Lance Stroll falling unwell, on the last day of testing. So all waits to be seen how they prepare for the first race of the season. I don't believe any team has really turned the wheel in anger, as we would say, just yet. So the best way to know how prepared or not someone is literally just the qualifying hour in Melbourne.
So, going off that, this is going to be a stupid question. So, what is the point of testing? I mean, you just said it just confused us even more, confused everyone even more. Is it more for the driver or for the car itself, or is it just to shock everyone that, hey, it's Formula One season, we're back, let's start talking about Formula One?
Actually, it's a mix of all of that. And firstly, there are no stupid questions in Formula One because it is such an intelligent sport that every question is either very intelligent or very stupid. So I always believed it balances itself out. Okay, it's like the Matrix. There's always a balance in the equation. For every Adrian Newey, there are millions of fans like us who have very silly questions. Okay, but I remember growing up, testing was never televised. Testing was always behind, I wouldn't say behind closed doors, but media would report only on the web or in written press. But now with this, this run of fandom that Formula One has had, they are televising everything in testing. Live testing is being put out there. Testing programs are being made for TV as well. The teams know that they can't just sit in the garages, wait out there. Can they go out and do a run and so on? So testing is for everyone. It is for fans. It is for them to see, how the cars are, what they look like on TV, adjusting to new team driver combinations. Like we've had so many, drivers change teams. I think testing is also for the commentators. You build up a lot of rust over the winter period. And I think testing is also when you get to share a lot more stories about the sport through the years because you get a lot more off time, even though it's, you're on air. But I think largely testing is for the teams. Formula One is one of those very, very few sports where you don't get to practice. Okay. All your practice happens in a simulator or it happens on the factory floor where most teams have pit stop practice every day. But it's never in real world conditions. Everything is simulated. So testing is actually to allow those teams saying, okay, you get those 3 days to practice before we embark on a 24 race calendar. I think it's too little. The reasons why it is capped is primarily money. They don't want teams to spend too much money, but also it forces the teams to dial in even more efficiencies in their design, saying you won't have endless number of days and endless number of kilometers to go testing. Something that used to happen, say in the Schumacher era in Ferrari. Michael would race the car on Sunday, win, fly over to Fiorano, get into the car on Monday and test, and he would drive 5 race distances on the Monday, and some of the smaller teams could never compete with that. So that's why now there's an official testing. It is standardized. Everyone gets the same opportunities. It's all to try and level the playing field.
So, just a follow up on that. I know a few drivers, particularly Signs, have been quite vocal about this new testing format and, given that there's six rookies this year, they're saying that it's unfair, right? Like what you said in terms of it is balanced, everyone gets the same time, but you have drivers like Kimi, Behrman, Lawson who've either had previous experience or they've had private testing hours, and then you have maybe like a Bortoletto who's not really had F1 car experience. So what do you think about that? How does it stack up? Like, how do you manage to, build that confidence before the first race when you're the least experienced on the grid?
I think that's a beautiful question because uh, everyone, like you said, gets the same amount of time. So Fernando Alonso, who's done 400 races, gets the same amount of time in pre-season testing or therein or thereabouts versus a Bortoletto who, is an F3, F2 champion who was, Kush Miney's teammate last year, where he gets the same amount of time. So what teams then rely on is private testing. It's a program called TPC, where they are not really forcing the drivers to go quicker and quicker because that's something that's ingrained in the driver. So at a race weekend, automatically a driver is dialed in to find more pace. They know where to brake late, where to carry more speed through corners, where to take more risk and not, and so on. Right. But what the teams are trying to do with the simulators is get drivers used to their routines, their processes, their settings, those steering wheels with so many multiple buttons and displays and so on. I think that's what the teams are focusing on in the off season with these newer drivers because these drivers are going to drive the most sophisticated cars ever built on the planet. Okay, when you take a step down to Formula 2, literally the amount of information and amount of setup options available is such little that a Formula 2 driver stepping into Formula 1 is suddenly, like going to be flooded with that array of information that's there. So it's about the teams being patient, the teams helping the drivers knowing what areas to focus on, what areas to ignore. If you remember Charles Leclerc in the first 7 races of his career, Marcus Ericsson, who of course now is an Indy 500 winner, but in Formula One was pretty much nowhere, was having the better measure of even the likes of Charles Leclerc. And then Leclerc stepped in, and I remember I was with him at this race in Spain. It was, Spain, the Spanish Grand Prix was always the first round of the European season. And that's where Leclerc came to a circuit he'd raced on before. And that's when, after 7 races, he stepped in and said, I want to do these certain things the way I am comfortable with. And guess what? He went quicker. And after that race weekend, he was just quicker than Marcus Ericsson. So much so that he had a mid season promotion to Ferrari that year itself. So teams will be wanting to be patient while helping the drivers learn these routines, these processes, and they will have these driver mentors who are just keeping them calm because these drivers are quick. They just need time, and Franz Tost, the driver, the team manager who groomed Max Verstappen, who groomed Sebastian Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo, and even Carlos Sainz, has always said that for any driver to succeed in Formula One, you need 3 seasons. They take the first year to, sometimes in the first year, it's just the car that's driving you. You're not even driving the car. And that's a very deep thought. Okay. In the second year, you're somewhere getting into a balance. It's in the third year where you're comfortable and you're confident that you are actually sitting and driving the car. So I really hope that a lot of these rookies that are there get those 3 seasons. I don't know if Jack Doohan will ever get 3 seasons in Formula One, but yeah, so it's a tough ask for the rookies, especially those who will be driving these cars for the first time on races or racetracks they've never driven on before.
Yeah. Also, yeah, coming to the rookies, right? I think we've been talking about them. I want to ask you if you can give us a ranking of all six rookies. So just to recap, that's Kimi, Antonelli, Behrman, Bortoletto, Doohan, Hadja, and Lawson. Can you give us your predictions about who's finishing in what order?
Actually, wow. So Lawson should finish up ahead because he's clearly going to be racing for the Red Bull. I would say the bottom of this may well be Isaac Hadjar, not because he's not talented. I think he's extremely well talented. In several conversations with Dr. Helmut Marko that we've had on the Inside Line F1 podcast, he's really supportive of Isaac Harjar, and of course, then there's the other driver, Arvid Lindblad, who's comes with Indian roots. So I would say it's Lawson and Harjar. Uh, Given just the package that they have, Jack Doohan should be within the top there as well, just after Lawson, because the Alpine is expected to go quicker. But I think we're going to see a Bearman versus Jack Doohan competition, because Haas has been doing extremely well since last year, since they've had the change in management as well. Bortoleto, again, very, very talented. Very few drivers have actually won F3 and then gone on to win F2 pretty much in their debut season. He did that against Isaac Hadjar. I think Bortoleto may well be where Isaac Hadjar is, just because of the package that he's got. And Kimi Antonelli, maybe he's going to battle with Liam Lawson. And again, in the case of Antonelli, I hope Mercedes is patient with him, is mentoring him the way Red Bull mentored Max Verstappen. I think what Mercedes did last year in Monza with Kimi Antonelli was not fair. They told him to drive the wheels of that car in FP1, something pretty much no driver is told to do or does. You always build up through the session, and then guess what? Poor Kimi, he was in the wall. It was his home race, home circuit. Much hyped debut for Mercedes in Formula One. And I still remember following Kimi Antonelli in Formula Regional, okay, the Freca series that he did, because there's a Norwegian driver that I know, Martinez Stenshurne, who was racing with him. And we were discussing contracts for Formula 3, and then suddenly there was no talk of Kimi Antonelli. And that's when we realized that, guess what? He's not having a conversation with Formula 3 teams because he's going straight to Formula 2. So I really hope Mercedes is able to mentor him. I mean, Mercedes has done that very well with Esteban Ocon and George Russell. Gwen Legru, who's the driver development manager in Mercedes, works with a lot of junior drivers, has some really good things to say for some of the Indian go-kart racers as well. So I think Kimi Antonelli is definitely going to be the most watched out for rookie in 2025.
Yeah, I think Kimi for me also is just by far the most exciting driver. I've seen him now race live as well, and yeah, he's just rapid. I think, as you said, he drove the wheels of that car. That lap was actually fantastic until he put it in the wall. But do you think Bortoleto is again following the trajectory that we've kind of seen of the best rookie driver basically joining the worst team on the grid? And why do you think that kind of has been the trend that we've seen?
Actually, again, a very interesting question. Unfortunately, what happens is winning Formula 2 doesn't guarantee you anything in Formula 1. You look at Felipe Drogovic, you look at Theo Porchar, you look at so many other drivers. Mick Schumacher, winning a Formula 2 and a Formula 3 and being a Schumacher, you have no guarantees in Formula 1. So Bortoleto would just be happy he's getting a break in Formula 1, because as a champion in Formula 2, he can't even go back and race there. And so, what do you do as a driver when you're with one of the worst teams possible, right? You literally still enjoy every moment you can, because these are those moments you dreamed for and you worked for all your life. You wait and see if there are any small chances for you to prove your talent. Could it be, a change in weather? Could it be mixed conditions? Could it be, a multi-lap pileup that happens, and suddenly you're finding yourself that odd opportunity to be in Q3 or score a point or something like that. So you're just waiting in there, to see if there is any wind that blows your way, which helps you, make attack and then, make a showing for yourself. But I think just winning Formula 3, Formula 2 in itself, I think Bortoleto has already shown a lot of promise, and it's just unfortunate that he will be in a Sauber, which is going to be ninth or 10th on the grid, best case eighth. But and Antonelli, who he beat in Formula 2, and Behrman, who he beat in Formula 2, will just be in faster cars. But that's just how it works with team driver development programs, I guess.
Yeah, I guess he has to follow the Russell blueprint, if anything else.
That's true. And, he's also a McLaren junior. McLaren let him go, but McLaren has two very young and very fast drivers. So for Bortoleto, he might be wondering, if I really do well, which top team can I actually side with? Because McLaren, it doesn't seem like they're going to, get rid of their drivers anytime soon, unless the papaya in the papaya rules becomes sour.
Yeah. And do you think, speaking of McLaren's drivers, do you think we'll ever see Pato aboard in F1, or is that door looking closed now?
I think if Pato O'Ward or Alex Palou or Colton Herta were to be in Formula One, either of these three were to be in Formula One, it has to be with Cadillac. I don't believe McLaren is where they will get a break, unless McLaren is allowed to run a third car, just because it's a nice and quick car, and that papaya black looks very pretty. But no, I think PS3 and Lando Norris is where McLaren's long-term future will be, unless there are some driver bombshells that happen, the likes of. So what could those bombshells be? I think two bombshells. First is Lewis retiring at some point, because that'll be a big driver in a big team void. And then the second is either Max deciding to go somewhere or taking a sabbatical, which is also possible given that it's Max Verstappen. So again, a big team, big driver needing another big name, so to say. So that's what I believe. So I don't think any of the American drivers or drivers racing in the American series are necessarily going to get a chance unless Cadillac gives them a look in.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned Hamilton a couple of times during our conversation. So moving from the rookies to the old heads, as we would say, this move to Ferrari, I mean, it's the most exciting thing. I honestly, as I've been supporting him since like 2007, I could have never seen this coming. So, you clearly love Schumacher. You cut a cake every year, I think, for his birthday as well. So, you said you don't really support any driver over the last few years, right? Since Schumacher left the sport. But is this move something that you think will get you back into supporting a driver, hoping they win? And is number 8 probable or possible?
Do you actually do that? The cake cutting?
I actually do that.
And
Yes,
what cake is it?
absolutely. Whatever my daughter
Okay.
and my wife want to
I
have.
thought
So the three
specifically
of
what
us.
Schumacher used to like. You cut
No,
that.
it was. I mean, usually it was a chocolate cake because that's what my mom liked. Okay, but we whatever's plant based and tastes good, and we bake at home as a family. So that's usually what we end up having. But yeah, on the 3rd of Jan is when we end up celebrating Michael's birthday. But I mean, would I celebrate or would I back a Lewis Hamilton winning at Ferrari? Absolutely, I would. I mean, over the years, having worked with pretty much all the teams and most of the drivers, what I realize is that uh, they are fantastic human beings. They're very competitive, but outside of the car, they're very friendly. They would ask how my family's doing. They would ask how things are in life in general, and they would genuinely care about you, right? And hence, I realized over time that yes, I may have some biases. I'm human, but pretty much every driver, whether it's a Hamilton in a Ferrari or a Bortoleto in a Sauber, is going to give their 100%. Is going to dream of big things in that car. And I believe that's what we all do, don't we? We all dream big through the day, through the night, wake up in the morning, go chase those dreams. And why not support anyone who's dreaming big, who's trying big? And, our lives are not under the public scanner, but these drivers are literally living in the public eye. So to me, that was one of those turning points, that I said, wow, how can you not like any driver for that matter? Okay. I've seen all of them up close and personal working so hard that they don't take anything for granted. Not a single session, I would say, not a single lap, because they all realize how privileged they are. That's why when Lewis and Sebastian were together, I used to call them a pair of saints racing in Formula One. Best fans. I'm so grateful. Let's enjoy this moment as long as it lasts. And lots of those prophetic statements they made was purely because of these self-realizations that they had in time. That, oh my goodness, I'm making history here. And I always dreamed of it, and very few of us get to make it. So I would love for Lewis to win with Ferrari. I would love for Ferrari to win, as much as I would love to watch Max Verstappen win with Red Bull this year against all expectations. As much as I would love to watch the two McLaren drivers go head to head. So to me, what I really am up for is a battle. I think the best driver and team will come out on top either way, but just having a battle would be fun. And yes, while I enjoy dominant sessions where there's a driver winning 10 races on the trot, that's also fun. I understand that for
That's not
casual
fun.
fans.
That's not
No,
fun.
I'll tell you where I'll tell you where it's fun. Okay, I'll tell you where it's fun. Imagine you wake up every day, okay, and everything you do that day turns into gold. And then that happens the next day. And that happens the next day. So for you as a driver, it's like, oh my goodness. That's Midas touch, as we call it, everything you turn. Of course, as a fan, it's completely boring. As a journalist, you're like, okay, what are the next stories I can write out of this? Can he win on three wheels the next time?
Which he did.
Yeah, which he,
But yeah, that's where I was coming from as a casual viewer, as a fan, as a journalist. It's not that much fun. But of course, for the driver, it's the best feeling in the world. Like, I can't do anything wrong.
yeah, it is. And even, even as a fan, and I say this as a fan of 19 drivers out of 20, I've been pretty vocal who I'm not a fan of. Okay. Pretty much, I love, I've been mentoring people for a long time. I have a daughter, of course, she calls me a coach sometimes. Okay. Imagine you're watching somebody, and it's that movie, Jim Carrey movie, where he is on a television show, but he's also living a real life. I
Truman
can't
Show?
I can't remember.
The Truman
Truman
Show.
Show. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Imagine you're watching that, and your favorite character. Of course, like I said, I have 19 favorite characters. Your favorite character wakes up every day, goes and wins a race, comes back the next day, different circuit, different characteristic, rain, no rain, sunshine, snowfall, whatever. Wins a race, gets up again, wins a race. So I see it as a very uh, parenting way, if that's the way that, wow, I have so many of these, kids who I've mentored over the years, and everyone's going to win, everyone's trying to win, but there's that one kid who's just, this is his year or this is her year and just maximizing. So it's a very different lens. I understand it's not entertaining,
Yeah.
but yeah, there is always something in every win we can learn from.
I wish I had your perspective because I follow so many sports and I can't get that perspective on any sport. Like, I love when people are motherfucking each other and just going at each other's necks.
Yeah,
And
but I think one thing like people also miss context about, right? Like you look at this dominance, if you see 2021, it was basically just Max and Lewis 1 minute on average ahead of the rest of the field. You could see like how just clearly better they were than their own teammates, everyone else they were racing. And yeah, I guess that's a different form of appreciation that you get as well.
Yeah, and I really hope that doesn't happen this year, where they're winning 1 minute ahead of the rest. And talking of drivers having a go at each other, I would actually love that in the press conferences. I would love boxing style press conferences, that I don't know if there are, viewers who consume the show who also would, I'm sure they understand Hindi, but dekh lunga tujhe, that kind of thing. They're very nice. Yeah, we had a great time. We were pals. We were playing paddle yesterday. We'll out qualify. We'll beat each other in qualifying. Shall we go and play flick tennis after that? And you're like, no, you're not supposed to be rivals. Look at each other with a bit of khunnas, as
yeah.
we'd say, right? But I guess that also doesn't happen. There's a reason, because all these drivers have spent years racing together at these go-kart circuits. They've always, gone out and beaten each other on track, and then 10 minutes later, eaten in the same pantry as well. Okay. So you just get used to not seeing your driver as a rival when they're out of the car. And I guess that's the reason why they're also brotherly towards each other.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's probably not very common or known is how small like these F2, F3 paddocks are as well, right? Like everyone's in like touching distance of each other and you cannot be having these like blood rivalries as you're growing up, as you said.
I mean, the F2 paddock is literally a tent. Okay. And in each tent there are two cars and the spares for those two cars. And all the tents are, a stone's throw away from each other. So you're right. It's very small, and very rarely will we see drivers who have never raced against each other before. especially with the new generation and so on. So, of course, Bortoleto and Hamilton, different generations have never raced together. They will do so this year. But Bortoleto, Hadjar, Behrman, Antonelli, they're all pretty much grown up together.
So, speaking about generations, there's this social media post that's been making the rounds. It's Lewis, LeBron James, and Ronaldo, all three of them entering the 40 club and being at the peak of their sport. And different fans of different sports have been just going at each other's neck saying, the basketball fans are like, LeBron's the GOAT, football fans saying that Ronaldo's the GOAT. As a Formula One fan, I'm giving you the floor to explain why Lewis Hamilton is clear of the rest and deservingly the king of the 40 club.
I would say for all non-sporting reasons, okay, and of course I don't know what LeBron James Cristiano Ronaldo have done outside of their sport, so that's a disclaimer. But what Lewis has done is he's literally brought non-Formula One fans, non-Formula One loving celebrities to Formula One. He's broken through those traditional fan bases. He's made people love the sport, but first they've loved him for who he is in the sport. And I think I love that. Only a few drivers have done that before him. There was Michael, there was Ayrton Senna, maybe Prost, and I can't even think before that who probably was Niki Lauda, maybe,
Fangio,
could be
maybe.
Fangio, yeah. But Lewis also has been using his platform to raise human voices in the sport, whether it's the Black Lives Matter, whether it's about diversity, whether it's about equality and equal chances and everything else that he thinks should be fixed in Formula One. So he's using that platform, he's lending his name, he's raising money for all these causes. And I think I love that about Lewis, because I'll put it this way. Again, very bluntly, I've been to several Formula One races. I don't see more than a handful of Indians out there. Indian journalists following reporting on Formula One. There's maybe two or three of us on a good day. At Singapore or Abu Dhabi, you might find six of us. Okay, the reason isn't that there aren't fans of the sport in India. There are many fans in India. Just goes to show how popular the broadcast is also with the official broadcaster. There is a lot of coverage that happens in India as well. But it's just that we have different priorities as a nation. Having said that, I don't think Formula One necessarily has India as a priority either.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I was also really hoping would take place is these Indian drivers, the trio that you mentioned, Arjun, Kush, Jehan. Maybe F1 would have seen the value in them, right? Like a billion plus people tuning in, very patriotic people, but obviously the issues with Hotstar, and now they have fan code back. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they don't see that as an investment yet. They probably don't see us as a very money spending market outside of viewership, and hopefully that changes. And I think Lewis, people look at it only as a black person, but I think it's going to be changes for everyone of color, everyone who's not got a voice in the sport yet.
I believe it is going to change. It is going to change soon. Uh, I know that Formula One would love to be back in India, much like pretty much every other sport. What happened to Formula One in 2011, 12, 13 was political. Okay. And, it was something similar that happened to Formula E in 2023. They raced in Hyderabad. They had a contract to come back in 24, change of government, and boom, went the contract, even though payments were made and so on, right? So for motorsport to flourish, there needs to be support from the highest governing government institutions, highest government representatives, bodies, whatever you call it. And I guess that's going to happen. We've seen the likes of Coldplay come and go, not two, but four shows, all of them sold out. I've seen some of the ticketing inventories that have run because, I was just running through some numbers for another A-list sport trying to come to India. And it's a lot of money, that everybody wants. It's just about then creating the right environment for the sport to come. and set a pace and be comfortable, and be predicted. You should be able to predict what your business is going to face as a challenge. Okay. I think a lot of unpredictability is what caught Formula One out in the first time they came to India. And talking of these three drivers, Arjun, very good. He just got a bad car in Formula Two, got stuck, and then you go nowhere. I think Jehan, who I've worked extremely closely with, Jehan and Kush, actually, both of them. Jehan, in his first season, had an engine which, he kept saying there's something up and nobody listened to him. And then by the time they agreed, half the season had gone. It was in Monza that year.
Yeah.
The minute they gave him the new engine, which was on par with the others, he was certainly top three drivers in the series.
And even his
But
Prema, I
guess what?
remember when he stalled off the line in Russia
Yeah,
and it cost him the
yeah, yeah.
championship.
So
Yeah.
it cost him that championship. And, he's had several such issues. In Austria, he had a disqualification with Prema as well. So I know Jian is at peace with what has happened in his career because he knows he gave it his best. Getting a seat into Formula One is also political as it is about talent. It is also financial as it is about talent. So all three pillars need to fire. I think Kush has got a very good chance, depending on how he goes in Formula Two this year. So I think Formula One is actually very eager if a driver can come from India. Okay, they just need to find the right package for it to happen. And I think at the moment, Kush is definitely our best bet.
Yeah. And I think lastly, we have a few minutes left. So talking about the future of the sport, but wanted to get a few thoughts from you on 2026, the regulations, GM, Cadillac, Ford, Audi. Lot of changes. I think we've probably not seen a year like this in this millennium. So yeah, what do you expect? What are you looking forward to the most?
I expect chaos. Okay, in 2026. I expect chaos just the way we saw chaos in 2014 when the new hybrid turbo power units were introduced. And just for everyone's reference, the first test, except for the Mercedes cars, pretty much every car was leaving the pits, not able to drive full pace, suddenly coming to a standstill and having reliability issues because the tech was so complicated. Okay. 2026 is the first time where both the chassis and the engine regulations are changing, which means pretty much everything is changing. Okay. And we've got Ford coming in, we've got Red Bull building an engine, which I think never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined that they would have done that. And although I think I was foolish, I didn't read it early because I've known the Red Bull management fairly closely, and they are so driven that tomorrow, if it means that they have to send a spaceship up to compete with SpaceX and then land it the way SpaceX does, I think they'll be capable of doing that. That's how driven they are as individuals. Okay. But having said that, you still need to build a sound power unit. So I think just exploring what's happening is in 26 with the new chassis, the X and Y mode, and all the other changes that Formula One is bringing, including 11th team, including maybe more races on the calendar as well. I think 2026 is going to be complete chaos, and it's chaos that nobody will be able to predict. And the only thing I hope for is that the field is still tight enough for everyone to be like, we don't know who's winning, but we know it's going to be chaotic.
Yeah, that 2026 sounds like it's going to be an amazing year, especially for someone like me, where I was like, I just want everyone to motherfuck each other. But yeah, that was about it. Thank you so much for your time. Satu, you have any last words for
Uh,
Kunal?
no, that's it. Thank you. And I hope you get to celebrate Lewis winning number 8. So
Yeah. And do you have anything you want to plug to our viewers and listeners?
Watch Formula One in 2025. It's going to be pretty fantastic. It's going to be one of the closest seasons to date in the history of the sport. There could be more than 8 drivers and 4 teams gunning for victory, 6 odd rookies, depending on who you ask. And if you are sitting on the fence, this is definitely the season to watch. You will fall on my side of the fence. If your friends and family who are also sitting on the fence, get them in. This is that one season which will make you a lifelong fan of Formula One.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And check out Kunal's podcast, Inside Line. And yeah, give it a follow, give it a listen. Thank you so much, Kunal. Um, we'll be having you on soon again to talk Formula One.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me. Lots of interesting questions, and look forward to talking more racing and sailing with you guys in the time to come.
for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.